What's up, y'all? I got another Serum patch breakdown for you today. This one's going to be a Tearout Growl. Sounds like that, and it also functions as a sustain bass. So, it's all in the Serum patch, so there's no post effects or anything on this. And with that being said, I'll just start going through it. So we have the basic concept on this one is Oscillator A acts as like a tonal layer to kind of like set the growl part of this into motion, and then we have Oscillator B, which is like a washed out width layer to kind of give it that more kind of more tear-outy feel than just a growl would, where a growl might be like dubstep or bro-steppy. So what I basically did here was I have my LFO2, which is my volume A, volume B, sub oscillator volume, and a couple other things, modulator. And so what I did here was I have envelope mode on all three of my LFOs, and then I turned them to BPM sync and set them to a half as the rate. So that does almost all of my, or it does all of my volumes, and then a couple of my like gated effects. And then I also have LFO1 and LFO3, which kind of do all the modulations on the filtering and a couple other things. So I'll leave my noise and my sub off, and we'll start with Oscillator A. So it is squelchy, which is in the spectral. It's squelchy 3, which is in spectral. It's pitched down 3 octaves. Then I just have this LFO1 routed to the wavetable position, so it just kind of scrolls through the frequencies there. And then again, LFO2 on the volume. So the next thing that I have here is the Oscillator B, which is again my width layer, and it just goes a little bit through the LFO1 goes a little bit through the different cycles of the wave, or through the different frames of the wavetable. But then also I go into the global tab here, and I turned my range all the way up to 48. So super wide. And if I turn it down, you'll see it really changes the tone of it and makes it almost like a bunch of screamy little voices, or whatever you might call that. Then I also turn my stack mode on 12 plus 7 times 2, which means, and I went over this in another tutorial, but I'll say it again, it means that the first voice is at the bass pitch, then the second voice would be at, I believe for the 7 times 2, it would be at the perfect fifth. Then the third voice is going to be at the bass pitch, right? So the standard octave. Then the fourth voice is going to be a octave and 5 and 7 semitones up, which is an octave and a perfect fifth up. And so it just repeats like that over and over for 16 voices. So we have like most of the voices are at the bass pitch, and then a couple stacks of the perfect fifth and the octave up perfect fifth. Then we have it on super mode. And so what that does is just skews the voices towards the correct pitch. See, that's what it actually sounds like if you just spread them way out. So then I route both of those A and B through the high notch 12 filter. And that's basically LFO sends the one band, the high pass filter band, up to kind of meet the notch filter. A little bit of drive on that, not fully wet, so not, there's a little bit of the clean signal bypassing the filter. And then I also have the amplitude modulating LFO on the resonance. So at the highest point, see how the notch can kind of get a little bit interfery and sound not so good when it's turned up. So it's just kind of keeping the high pass and the notch filter from being too aggressive and making that weird resonance. So before keeping it moving, I'll go ahead and say the noise is actually not on, so I'll just turn that off. And then the sub is just direct out, right? So it's bypassing my filter and all my effects. So then moving into the effects, there's quite a bit of effects on this one. So we have a hyperdimension expander, which is kind of washing it out a bit, right? Only the wetness is on in this one, and the unison voices are turned all the way up. And then I also have this LFO modulating both the rate and the detuning, which just makes it even more washed out and chaotic sounding. So then our next thing is I have an EQ here that I am modulating with this separate LFO, and as you can see, it's just a little bit delayed, right? So it goes, its peak is a little bit past my first filtering, and then it's also, its decay is less sharp. And I'm doing the exact same filter again, right? I have a notch that goes and meets a high pass. Oh, I'm sorry, not a high pass. This one's a low band that I've just killed the gain on and then boosted the resonance to give it more tonal shaping down in that low mid. And as you can see, without it, it's super muddy on the low mid side. So that really cleans the sound up. Then next, I have a reverb here. And the reverb, as you can see, with it fully wet, is pretty small size, pretty short decay. And then I'm cutting a bunch of the lows out of it and leaving all of the high end. And then also, if I turn my sustain on, its spin is turned all the way up and the depth is pretty low, which just helps that high frequency. Almost gives it that width of like the phase 1 sustain growl from Drop Bears or whatever that is. That's a super good song, but it kind of just helps it be a little wider in that sense. And then I also, for this, had to put, where are we at? Had to put on the LFO2, which controls it. It gates that reverb, right? I had to put envelope 1 to gate it again, because in sustain mode, if I bypass this, oh, I actually have to turn it off in here. It decays out and I didn't want that. So I turned envelope 1 to gate the LFO again because it's getting left on fully loud if I don't do that, right? My next effect is a little bit of distortion here, right? Wetness at 20, drive at 20, diode 2. Like, which if I turn it all the way up, it's just a little bit more strong of a distortion, but too much can kind of get into that category where it's not really that helpful to the sound. So I tried to not go overboard with the distortion there. Then I have a low pass 6 filter here that we are putting, again, LFO 1 on. So it just lets the high end, basically it starts out with no high end, lets the high end come through, and then gates it again. So we got, you know, no high end, full high end, no high end. It helps it be more of a growl when that sustain macro is turned off. And then it's just a little bit of resonance, a good amount of drive just to boost the signal, and then some fatness again, I think, which just boosts it some more. And so then we have a flanger, which if I turn the sustain back on, it's just kind of going, it's at 1/32 rate, so it's a really quick flange. The depth is at the midpoint. Feedback's turned down a little bit, I think. Yeah, feedback's turned down a little bit. And that's just kind of doing some modulation to that high end that's really already wide and already kind of mangled anyways, so maybe not the most necessary. But yeah, I do feel like it's giving it some kind of a tonal quality that I like. So then moving on to the compressor here, we have a multiband compressor, threshold near the midpoint, rate at the default position, and then the release I turned all the way down on this one because there's no tails that we need to get rid of, and I also turned the attack a little bit longer because the short attack is kind of making that initial transient a little bit too punchy for my liking. So then lastly, we have the sustain knob, which if you hadn't already noticed, I have all of my points here that don't hit the top point. I just put the sustain knob, modulated the Y position, which goes up and down, right, like that. And then went into my, and I did that to every single point. And because it's envelope mode, it's going to stay at this final point. So since I put it on all of these, this one, this one, this one, these two, that means that when the LFO finishes its movement, it's going to stay at that last point. And so by going in here and just maxing all these out, right? Macro 2 maxes all those out. It just means it's going to stay loud till the end. And so that's going to be really it for this one, y'all. I think this is a pretty good preset to have in your arsenal, and definitely like you can do a lot more with post effects to make this I think it's already pretty good, but like an even better sound. So with that being said, y'all, I hope this one was helpful. I hope this is a sound that you can use in your Tearout tracks and kind of get some mileage out of and improve and do better. So yeah, thanks for watching. I'll see y'all in the next one.